Let the right one in. Part 1. The New Neighbor. Maple Hollow was a town frozen in time, blanketed by endless snow and silence. 14-year-old Evan Harker lived in a crumbling house at the edge of town, trapped between his distant, overworked mother and his violent, drunken father. He spent most of his time alone, wandering the woods or watching the world from his frost-covered window. One evening, just after dusk, he noticed a moving truck parked next door, a rare sight in a town where nothing ever happened. He squinted through the icy window, seeing only two figures, a middle-aged man hauling boxes and a girl. She stood perfectly still by the edge of the trees, her face pale and thin, dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore only a light hoodie despite the biting cold. Evan stared, intrigued. Then, as if sensing his gaze, she turned and locked eyes with him. Her stare was piercing, deep, and unsettling. That night, as the wind howled outside, Evan thought he heard something strange, soft tapping on his window. But when he checked, only fresh snow lay undisturbed on the ground. Part 2. The girl in the dark days passed before Evan saw the girl again. It was after school when he found her sitting on a broken swing set in the park near the woods. She watched him with an unreadable expression, unmoving, like a statue. He approached cautiously. "Hey, you just move in?" She tilted her head. "I've been here longer than you think," she said cryptically. "I'm Lila." Her voice was soft but strangely commanding. They talked. Well, Evan talked. Lila listened with eerie intensity, offering only the occasional strange, old-fashioned reply. She seemed curious about him, as if trying to remember how to be human. Before leaving, she fixed him with a sharp gaze. "You shouldn't be out after dark," she warned. "And don't invite anyone inside your home." Evan laughed awkwardly, thinking she was just being weird, but the chill in her voice stayed with him long after she'd vanished into the shadows. Part 3. Missing Persons. A week later, the town was rocked by a grim discovery. Alex Carter, a local high school bully, had gone missing. Days later, his body was found near the frozen river, pale and lifeless, his neck marred by strange puncture marks. The sheriff muttered about wolves or a hunting accident, but people whispered darker theories about cults, rituals, or something worse. Evan couldn't shake the thought of how Alex had cornered him behind the school only a week before, threatening him with a knife, and how Lila's eyes had gleamed when he told her about it. That night, he awoke to faint tapping on his window again. Heart pounding, he slowly drew back the curtain, only to find Lila standing barefoot in the snow. Her dark eyes glimmered in the moonlight. "I can keep you safe," she whispered, "but you have to trust me." Part 4. The hunger winter deepened, locking Maple Hollow in snow and ice. Evan and Lila continued meeting secretly near the woods. He noticed how thin she was, her skin almost translucent, her lips pale. One night, as they sat by a frozen stream, she winced in pain, doubling over. "I need something," she gasped, her breathing ragged. "Are you sick?" Evan asked, panicked. "Yes, but not like you think," she whispered, trembling. He offered to get help, but she grabbed his wrist with startling strength, her grip icy and desperate. "You can't help me unless—" Her words hung in the air, unfinished. The wind howled through the trees like a living thing. Part 5. The truth revealed. The next night, Evan heard a noise in the woods. Thinking it was Lila, he hurried outside, but what he found froze him in place. There she was, crouched over a dead deer, its throat torn open, blood staining the snow. Her mouth was smeared with crimson, her eyes burning with hunger. She turned slowly, her face twisted with shame and desperation. "I didn't want you to see this," she whispered. "I tried to stay away." Evan stumbled backward, his breath coming in gasps. "What are you?" Her voice trembled with sadness. "Something you shouldn't let in." Part 6. The Bargain. In the days that followed, Evan avoided her, terrified of what he'd seen, but loneliness gnawed at him, and guilt burned even deeper. One snowy evening, he found her waiting near his window, looking thinner and more fragile than ever. He couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her. even knowing the truth. "Why are you still here?" he demanded. She hesitated, then whispered, "You saw me, and you didn't run." Despite everything, he couldn't leave her. Not when she needed him, but the bloodshed haunted him. "Promise me you'll stop," he pleaded. "I'll try," she said, her voice soft, but her eyes glinted with something darker. Part 7, The Invitation. One freezing night, Evan's drunken father came home in a violent rage, fists flying. Evan barely escaped into the snow, his face bloodied, ribs aching. He collapsed against the back door, gasping for breath, tears freezing on his cheeks. Suddenly she was there, Lila, emerging from the shadows like a dark angel. "Let me in," she whispered, her voice cold but filled with burning intensity. For the first time, he understood the rule, the terrible power of an invitation. Through tears, broken and desperate, he whispered, "Come in." Part 8, The Price Paid. The next morning, the house was deathly silent, red stains seeping into the snow outside. Evan sat alone in the icy living room, trembling. His father was gone. Forever. Lila stood by the window, her dark eyes unreadable, her face serene. "You saved me," she said softly. He realized the terrible truth. There was no going back now. He was bound to her, and she to him. Together they vanished into the snowy woods, their shadows swallowed by the endless winter. The town whispered about the monster that haunted the cold nights, and the boy who let her in.